Proverbs 8 and 9. Now therefore, O sons, listen to me, for blessed are they who keep my ways. Heed instruction and be wise and do not neglect it. Blessed is the man who listens to me, watching daily at my gates, waiting at my doorposts. For he who finds me finds life and obtains favor from the Lord. But he who sins against me injures himself. All those who hate me love death. Wisdom has built her house. She has hewn out her 7 pillars. She has prepared her food. She has mixed her wine. She has also set her table. She has sent out her maidens. She calls from the tops of the heights of the city. Whoever is naive, let him turn in here. To him who lacks understanding, she says, come, eat of my food and drink of the wine I have mixed. Forsake your folly and live, and proceed in the way of understanding. He who corrects a scoffer gets dishonor for himself, and he who reproves a wicked man gets insults for himself. Do not reprove a scoffer, or he will hate you. Reprove a wise man, and he will love you. Give instruction to a wise man, and he will be still wiser. Teach a righteous man, and he will increase his learning. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. For by me your days will be multiplied, and the years of your life will be added to you. If you are wise for yourself. If you scoff, you alone will bear it. The woman of folly is boisterous. She is naive and knows nothing. She sits at the doorway of her house, on a seat by the high places of the city, calling to those who pass by, who are making their path straight. Whoever is naive, let him turn in here. And to him who lacks understanding, she says, stolen water is sweet, and bread eaten in secret is pleasant. But he does not know that the dead are there, that her guests are in the depths of Sheol. The word of the Lord. Last week we began a series on the book of Proverbs, which we hope to pursue through the rest of the summer. And we began last week with kind of an introduction to the introduction. And in chapters 1 through 9, the writer is setting a table for his son for a banquet. And 9 chapters he takes, a third of the book basically, to set the table for the banquet that's about to come. The Proverbs themselves start only after the table is set for 9 chapters. And the Proverbs themselves start in chapter 10, where Solomon will offer 375 sayings meant to enhance life, meant to promote life, to protect life, to help the son navigate life. And this meal, chapter 10 and following, is so valuable, so important, so life-sustaining, that the father, before he sort of rings the triangle and says, come and get it in chapter 10, he has to ensure that the son will savor the food. So for 9 chapters, very creatively, he is persuading, illustrating, enticing, arguing, convincing. The wise father is doing everything he can for 9 chapters before the meal is served to set the table, to provoke his son to want to come and eat of the banquet of wisdom. Son, come to the table hungry. You ever host people at your house where you go through all the difficulty of preparing a meal, and they get there and you slide the meal across the table to them, and they say, just a little bit, I kind of ate before I came. And you think to yourself, what in the world? Why would you do that? And this father wants to ensure that does not happen with his son. Come to the table hungry. Know the value of the fare you're being fed. Now today, we explore a device utilized by Solomon in these 9 introductory chapters. It's a rhetorical device meant to engage the son's imagination and provoke him to really want the meal that's about to be served. The rhetorical or literary device I have in mind is personification. The longer word is anthropomorphism, but we'll just stick with the slightly shorter one, personification. Personification is when an abstract quality or an idea or even an entity is represented by human characteristics. For instance, we just celebrated Independence Day as a nation, and you probably saw on or around the 4th of July a personification of the U.S. federal government in the form of a character. You know the character? He wears a top hat with a band of stars across the front. We call him Uncle Sam. That's a personification of the government. And the writer here personifies wisdom and folly as 2 women, the woman wisdom and the woman folly. And there are, in the first 9 chapters, there are 5 distinct passages that personify wisdom as a woman and 5 distinct passages that personify folly as a woman. And they come together at the end of the introduction, at the end of the setting the table, when the banquet is about to begin in chapter 10. They come together in chapter 9 for one final comparison of the 2 women. It's a culmination or finale of this long invitation to wisdom. And what I want to do today is kind of draw together all of these 10 passages, 5 on the woman folly, 5 on the woman wisdom. I want to kind of draw our attention to one particular point of comparison between the 2 women that comes up again and again, comes up repeatedly, and I think it's not only the main thing we're supposed to take away, but I think it is particularly applicable or relevant to our society in this particular cultural moment that faces us. And then I want to see how the comparison of these 2 women is a device that's used not only in the book of Proverbs, but it's a motif or theme that's developed in the entire Bible from Genesis to Revelation, and then just close with what it means to our daily lives. If you take, again, all these 10 passages, 5 on wisdom, 5 on folly as women, and if you compare the 2 women using all these 10 passages, I think one particular point of contrast is highlighted between wisdom and folly, and I think it might be the contrast that the writer has in mind, and that is wisdom waits and foolishness rushes in. In fact, we have a modern proverb to that effect. Fools rush in where angels fear to tread. Folly is restless and she's hurried and she's promising shortcuts and get-rich schemes and ways to cut corners so that you can still get what you want. Folly is always there to say, it's suckers who wait, but stick with me and I can get you to the front of the line. Chapter 9 is symmetrical. It's contained in 3 particular paragraphs, 6 verses in each stanza. The first paragraph is a description of woman wisdom. Then in 7 to 12, where the theme of the book is reiterated about the fear of the Lord. And then 6 verses for woman folly. Both women are inviting the naive. 2 women, 2 banquets, and the main difference is that one waits and the other doesn't, because she doesn't have to, because waiting is a drag. I remember one of our older members, this illustration meant a lot to her. I talked about how we as a culture hate waiting. We hate waiting in the doctor's office, don't you? Waiting is a drag. Don't you agree that waiting is a drag? And I remember the illustration that meant so much to her is an illustration I used about being impatient as we sit outside of the microwave oven, tapping our foot, rolling our eyes, thinking, I can't believe I have to wait 1 minute and 30 seconds for a cup of soup. I mean, how dare we think that that has anything to do with waiting? Chapter 8, which introduces this final comparison where the women are held up next to each other for comparison. Chapter 8 ends on this particular theme. Verse 34, we printed it at the top of your bulletin today. Happy is the man who listens to me, watching daily at my gates, waiting at my door. Again, zeroing in on what is the real point of difference between these two approaches to life. The woman, wisdom, is not in a hurry. She does not make haste. She is instead a careful builder. Verse 1, she built her house as if she took the time to oversee the actual building of the house. She is a skilled worker. She uses real artistry in her labors. She has hewn out 7 pillars. Again, the picture is of care, of quality, of skill and time. She put in the time to hew out pillars. It's not just a matter of going to Home Depot and saying, I'll take 7 pillars, please. In that situation, you're going to a stone quarry where you get blocks of stone, each of which has to be carved with a hammer and chisel and fitted together to make 7 pillars. 7, which is, of course, the biblical number of completion, like the 7 days of creation. She prepares a meal. It's not takeout. It's not fast food. It's not just thrown together. It's prepared. It comes with pairings of wine, fine wine, place settings for her valued guest. She takes time to send out invitations. She gets on the highest place in the city and announces. She sends out her maidens with invitations. She takes the time to ensure that everyone who should be invited is invited. Her house is not the kind of house that's like a pop-up tent. It has taken a long time to build. It is big and spacious enough to accommodate all comers. She invites everyone who owns up to the name. She says, whoever is naive, whoever lacks understanding, come, eat my food, drink my wine. She says basically, all you need is need. All you need is need. Isn't it cool that right here in the Proverbs is a real bright flash of grace? All you need is need. There's no seats for people who know it all. Only for people who can admit they need understanding. People who get it that they don't get it. You have to admit that. And the price of admission, forsake your folly and live and proceed in the way of understanding. It's like a person who's got all these packages and parcels full of folly and they can't get in the door. And all she says is, just drop the thing that's destroying you and come in and have life and that which can enhance life and lead to skillful living. And then after these 6 verses, there's a 6-verse interlude warning against the deadly know-it-all posture. We can't help you if you have no need of help. If you're a scoffer and laughing at wisdom and you think that you know it all, we can't really help you here at this banquet. In fact, it's one of the ways that you can know that you are in the house of wisdom, that you are a person who welcomes criticism into your life. And I don't know how many people here would want to raise their hand and say, yeah, I love criticism. And then the theme of the book is once again reiterated as we saw last week. Verse 10 in today's chapter, it's the crux or the hinge of the whole passage, and this is the center of the whole thing. The beginning of wisdom is the fear of the Lord, and the knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. That's right at the center of the chapter again. And then, notice the symmetry, 3 stanzas, 6 verses each, where we hear one last time from the other woman, the woman Folly. She speaks. How does she speak, you ask? Loudly. She's boisterous. The word in Hebrew is used of barking dogs and used of storms. She is loud and impatient. She doesn't have time to send out invitations by her maidens. She just sort of blurts it out. She is herself simple and naive, and yet she has nothing to offer the simple and naive. That word naive comes up again and again in the book of Proverbs, the Hebrew word pati, like P-T-I. And it means someone who is open, like we would say open-minded, but so open-minded that your brain leaks out. And it's someone who refuses to commit ethically, morally, intellectually, someone who refuses to come down on a position, just stays open, uncommitted. She knows nothing, and yet she has all the answers. She overpromises and underdelivers. She sits or lurks at the door. Open door, open mind, all her options are open. She competes with Lady Wisdom, and she tries to divert those who are making progress, verse 15, those who are on straight paths. She speaks like wisdom, whoever is naive or lacks understanding, but she has nothing to offer. Did I say nothing to offer? I didn't mean nothing to offer. She actually has a banquet waiting for you. What is it, you ask? Bread and water. Bread and water is what they used to feed the prisoners in the old westerns. Blah. Bland. But never fear, because she has something to spice it up for you. She confides in her guests. Psst, lean in. And as you lean in, she says, this is stolen water and stolen bread. And that makes it exotic and exciting. And this is perhaps her main strategy. Shortcuts, immediate gratification, get-rich-quick schemes. Why work for it when you can get it for free? And when you get things by trickery and artifice and beating the system, when others have to work for it, but you get it for free, it makes you feel exceptional. You suckers have to work for it. I get it for free. I'm special. Now, if you read all the 5 passages on Woman Folly, you'll find that she is also presented quite often as an immoral woman. In fact, chapters 5 and 7 devote a whole chapter to Woman Folly, who is a prostitute and an adulteress. But, and I think this is important to remember, the thing that really characterizes her is this shortcut thing. She's always telling people how to cut corners, how to get to the front of the line. I really do believe, after looking at all the passages, it's the thing that's highlighted the most. It is her defining attribute. And this brings me to you. Can I talk about you for a second? Can I talk about us for a second? I want to talk about our society. What happens when you take this mentality about shortcuts and haste and get-rich-quick mentality and you apply it to sex. Got quiet. And you apply it to intimacy and erotic love and relationships and friendships. See, Madam Folly can help you get stuff that you want without paying for it, without waiting for it, without working for it. She can promise intimacy without the normal, messy baggage and tedium of conversation. You know, getting to know people by sitting across a table for them and listening to all their boring stuff. She says, I know a way around that. Without spending time, without giving up your options, without making commitments, you can remain uncommitted. You can keep all your options open. She promises a shortcut. She promises instant intimacy. But the question is it really possible to have intimacy, to have erotic love, even to have friendships and real relationships immediately? And I think if we listen, and I hope you'll listen this coming week, I think if we listen, you will hear the voice of folly ringing loud and clear in our own society, ringing from the high places, the airwaves, and the leading voices in our own culture, in our day. And she is promising you and us, our society, wealth without work, intimacy without binding commitments, and friendship with people you've never even seen, like or don't like. Virtual friends that come immediately with a click of the mouse. And I think we can all see how our culture is very vulnerable to the voice of folly. Maybe because we love efficiency as modern South Floridians. We love time saving. We love labor saving devices. I remember one woman in our church who was being interviewed to become a new member. I said, do you have any friends? She said, my best friend is my Roomba. You know what that is? Yeah. It's that vacuum cleaner robot that drives all around your house. It's a labor saving device. My best friend is Roomba? Okay. We love efficiency, and yet that can so easily devolve into cutting corners, lessening quality. Stolen water is sweet. You know, when you can have something for free or little effort, everybody likes that. And stolen bread is pleasant. See, folly has her proverbs as well. And you know, I'm really not here today to whine about how bad our society is. I'm not here to be alarmist about social media. I myself have a Facebook account. Friend me. I have a Facebook account, and yet I also admit, Missy will tell you, I'm 5 minutes on Facebook before I start feeling a low level of depression and disgust, and I get off it. If you stay on it longer than that personally, I'm not judging you, I'm just telling you my own experience with it. But for whatever reason, we in this fast-paced generation, the nano generation, are very, very susceptible to promises of relationship and friendship and sex without the difficult work of binding commitments. The promises of the sexual revolution combined with the ease and the speed of technology. No waiting. And we are facing a national relationship crisis. Now you might say, TJ, I think that's a little overblown. A national relationship crisis? Well, it's amazing in the reading that I do how this is starting to come to the fore in some of the most unlikely places. I talked about this before, but back in 2015, Vanity Fair magazine. Now, Vanity Fair magazine is not a rag. It's not the kind of stuff that you see when you're in the checkout line at the supermarket. It is a literary magazine. It's very thoughtful writing in it, but by no means is it morally traditional. And Vanity Fair magazine publishes an article called Tinder and the Dawn of the Dating Apocalypse. Tinder and the dawn of the dating apocalypse. Now, some of you don't know what Tinder is. Good for you. Tinder is a dating app. It's how I met Missy. No, not really. Come on. Tinder is a dating app, and in this particular article, they talked about people working on Wall Street in the financial sector who go into a club or a bar, and they open up their Tinder account on their phone, and there are people in there, meet their profile, and many of the women in this particular article say how they go in and sometimes they receive a proposal on their Tinder account that just says, "Do you want to?" And that's code words for, right now we'll leave the club and we'll go to bed together on the spot. Why? Because who has time for romance? There's no time for sitting across the table and getting to know one another. I'm already working a 70-hour week. How can I have time? And Tinder is promising intimacy without waiting. Sounds a lot like Woman Folly. Sex is still happening on Wall Street among the young professionals. Just no relationship. Just no romance. No waiting. Again, in 2016, unlikely places, Pamela Anderson. You think the only Pamela Anderson I know is on Baywatch. That's the one I'm talking about. Pamela Anderson joins forces with an Orthodox Jewish rabbi. They write an op-ed piece for the Wall Street Journal. In the Wall Street Journal op-ed piece, they call internet porn a national crisis. And just to summarize their argument, Pamela Anderson. Basically, her argument with the rabbi is, look, people, sex without commitment is killing our society. That is leading to death. And it's a matter of national self-interest that we address it. Folly leading to death. The naive, the simple, go into the house of folly, and then when it's too late, they realize that her guests are in the depth of Sheol, the realm of the dead. And the really creepy thing about folly, either for individuals or whole societies, it's like a horror movie. Once you give yourself to her, when it's too late, you look around and you realize that at the table with you are corpses. It's like a horror movie. And Gordon Woolard at the first service said, yeah, you can check out anytime you want, but you can never leave. Now, the two women motif is not unique to Proverbs, and George reminded me a couple weeks ago when he knew I was going into Proverbs, gave me an article by our common friend, Warren Gage, a theologian that we've had to speak here at Park Road. Reminded me of an article written by Warren Gage about how prominent this choice between two women theme is in the entire Bible. The writer of Proverbs, Solomon himself, you remember after he was put on the throne and he prayed for wisdom. His first act of judgment was to judge between two women. Remember? Two prostitutes were arguing over a baby. It's mine, it's mine. No, it's mine, it's mine. And Solomon says, I know, we'll just cut the baby in half. Of course, that's when the real mom stood up and said, don't do it, I'll give it to her. And Solomon said, you're the real mother. A choice between two women. Just to isolate one more, in the many, many times this motif shows up in the Bible, the choice that Abraham had between Sarah and Hagar. God promises to give Abraham and Sarah a child, even though they themselves were far past childbearing age. And after they grew tired of waiting, there's that word, waiting, wait for it, wait for it. After they're tired of waiting, and they wanted no longer to have to trust God and His promise, they wanted now not to take God seriously, not to live in the fear of Yahweh, not to depend on God's loyalty to His own covenant to them, His Hesed. Then Abraham opted, with the collaboration of Sarah, opted for a shortcut, immediate gratification. Get the baby not by waiting, but we'll get the baby DIY. Do it yourself. And so Abraham sleeps with Hagar, and they make a baby the do-it-yourself way. And the New Testament interprets this whole scene allegorically in Paul's letter to the Galatians. Quote, "This is allegorically speaking, for these women are two covenants." It's a whole motif. It's a whole theme in the Bible. It's a choice between two ways of living. One stands for God's promise, Sarah. The other stands for sweat, doing it by effort, DIY, doing it yourself, doing good things so that you can be thought of as being good. Human ingenuity and impatient effort. And this is always the choice before us. To go the way of trust, which is always uncomfortable and requires us to be patient with God, to wait on the Lord, or to go the way of instant gratification, DIY, where you know what's best, where you are in control, where you make it happen on your schedule. No waiting. And the way of trust, the way of effort, the way of wisdom, the way of folly, the way of my weakness, where I have to admit that I don't get it and I need divine help, that I am naive, that I am uncommitted, that I am uncertain and simple, and where I have to humble myself and forsake my folly, drop my packages at the door. And the way of the boisterous woman who is calling me to leave the straight path, I have to forsake that, stop wallowing around in stolen water, isn't it sweet, and stolen bread, where I have to stop trying to get to the front of the line so I can impress you and I can convince myself I am an exceptional person. Jesus Christ comes to us, and he is not only a literary device. He's not only the personification of wisdom. He is the very mind of God made flesh. And he is the perfection of wisdom. To trust him is uncomfortable. We'd rather do it ourselves than to depend on the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ as my only hope and my only standing before God. I'd rather make myself exceptional than to simply have God declare it, that you belong to me and that I am your Father. And that's the only thing that makes you special. I'd rather have something that you can see and I can impress you, like the boisterous, loud woman, glitzy and flashy. But doing things my way, with all of my shortcuts and schemes, is the way of folly, and it always leads to death. And it's been the ruin of many a poor boy. What keeps us from the clutches of woman folly is the hope, is the trust that as wisdom was there at the beginning when God made all things, so wisdom in the person of Jesus Christ, the truest expression of wisdom, will be there in the end when God remakes all things. A new creation where he who loved me, lived, died, and rose for me, will also recreate me. And the way of the world, with all of its schemes and shortcuts, can't do that for me. Only Jesus Christ can turn the naive and simple into wise men and women and pillars in the house that he is building, made up of living stones, as we heard in the Sunday class, from every tribe, nation, and tongue, a new temple. You know, I don't know everybody here, and as I've said so many times before, even the people I know, I don't really know. Don't even really know myself. But if you're here today and not a believer in Jesus Christ, you may be thinking, so I think what I heard the preacher say today is, we need to slow down and do careful work. Be craftsmen. Don't cut corners. We need to earn it, deserve it. We need to wait to have sex until we're married. We need to stop with this instant gratification thing. And I'm telling you, if you take that away from you today, well, you got your money's worth. But, in fact, wisdom will urge a kind of self-interest in this. Like, if you live this way, it's better for you. You know, for by me your days will be multiplied. Live according to folly, you'll have a shorter life. If you are wise for yourself. So what I'm saying is, if you listen to me today and you're not a believer in Jesus Christ, you'll still benefit from what we're talking about today. If you scoff, you will bear it alone. To put it in modern parlance, if you reject wisdom, it's on you. It'll come back on you. But there is a higher form of self-interest in this passage, what John Piper calls Christian hedonism. The passage is a whisper of a banquet of well-prepared food and finest wine in a house that is solid and secure and will never come down. A house that is always and only full of joy. And therefore, I urge you to this higher motive. Wait on Jesus Christ. Put all of your hope in him. It's why we can slow down and take our time. It's why we eat together. You know, some years ago I heard about a slow food movement. Have you heard about that? There's the fast food movement and the slow food movement. I think they are making progress, but you know, it's been slow. But you know, it's why we can spend time together, why we can waste time together, and that's required. It's why we can be craftsmen in our jobs and in our homes, why we can take our time. I love how the King James Version translates Isaiah 28:16. He that believeth shall not make haste. Haste characterizes those who live in the house of folly, because we know him who loved us and gave himself for us, and that he has a place set for us at his table. I can rest in that because I know it's not all up to me. And wisdom himself will remake all things, and I will be there. So daily, we watch and wait. We walk in the way of wisdom with its delayed gratification. We're living by faith in the promise of life, eternal life. Let's pray together.